What's up? Justin says, I am late. That is rude. No diggity, but you're right. No diggity doubt about it. I am late. So, to Justin and anybody else who may have been waiting on me, I am so sorry. I am 2 minutes late, and it is a random Monday night. Gosh, I lose track of what day it is here during quarantine. What's going on, Riley? How are you tonight? Simon, hey, how are you guys doing? Good to see you guys in here. I know we saw a little bit of each other, Riley, a few nights ago. Simon, missed each other. It is Tuesday night, not Monday. Thank you for the correction, Simon. Hope you guys are well on this Tuesday night. Um, we are going to talk about some soft plastics this evening. Thank you for the thumbs up. One of the four of you guys in here already hit that thumbs up. Do that. Justin, cut it out, man. Why are you late? He says. You know, it takes a lot for me to get everything together, get this stream started. You know what I mean? Got to turn off my AC slash heater. I got to gather this tripod and my charger. Got to get a drink. Got to get all my things set up. And it takes me a few extra minutes. Always. I was only like 2 minutes late tonight, man. Riley, don't worry about not commenting last week. I got your comment after the fact. I've done a really poor job of responding to comments and updating my thumbnails and descriptions of my videos and things like that for the last handful of videos that I've made. So I apologize for that. Um, I still need to get in touch with Ron about him winning the giveaway here and still need to decide what I'm going to do with all the hard baits from the giveaway on Instagram. I am going to put those white flukes in with this month's giveaway. And I'll tell you what my plan is for this month's giveaway. And I'd love your guys' thoughts on how the giveaway ought to work this month and moving forward. Because there are a few other people that I watch who do live streams. Ryan, what's up, man? How are you doing tonight? Simon says, do what you got to do. So, yeah, there's a few other people like Tackle Junkie. Not sure if you guys watch him. Bateman, of course, and then Smallmouth Crush, who's been posting, the last week in a row. But Bateman especially and Tackle Junkie do giveaways pretty frequently. But Bateman does it kind of randomly, and Tackle Junkie does it every single time he streams. Just makes it about the super chat deal. So I like all of those guys, and I'm just curious to know how you guys think it would be most fair and most organized to just go ahead and run a giveaway and pick a winner and have it not be complicated. And it can be just YouTube specific, but I do want to make sure that it's relatively worth my while and that I'm not just giving away a shit ton of stuff all the time. Because last week I gave away probably 20, $25 worth of soft plastics, and I'm happy to do that, but not if I'm streaming twice a week and not getting any real way to help pay for it. Because part of my deal on Instagram is that I do giveaways there, so I want to continue to do that. But anyway, Ryan says it's finally not snowing here. Yeah, we just got snow here yesterday and the day before here in Colorado. It melted mostly today. So got a little bit of snow left, but it is mostly melted. Grass is greening up. Hopefully, I have some opportunities to get out of the house and go fishing here in the next week or two. I've had a couple people from Instagram and YouTube hit me up who are local here in Colorado wanting to fish together. And I think that is super cool and will be cool when we can do so and maybe record a YouTube video together, but not quite safe to do these days. So Wayne said, most fair way to go about it is just give it to me. All right, next time, Wayne, it's all yours. Simon says, can people donate lures or money? Uh, Lures or money? That's interesting. Uh, Maybe I'll give that some thought for sure. I think Tackle Junkie just says any donation, like it could be a buck, uh, just a super chat donation of anywhere from $1 or up, right? And so people tend to donate one, two, $5, kind of whatever. And I think he ends up getting, I have no idea. I'm using rough numbers here. Maybe call it 20 or 30 entries that stream, and he might make $50, and so he's giving away like 10 packs of soft plastics, and um, it's the donations are helping pay for what ends up going into the giveaway. But if people are donating lures to go into, say, the next giveaway on what it is, because I've made a point to give away very specific stuff so far. For the most part, I'm not doing a lot of like closet cleaning and getting rid of stuff that I don't like. Though I will admit, and I did admit last month, a couple of the things that I gave away on Instagram. One being this Terminator shuttering bait is one that I tried and did not like. It's a vibrating jig with a split ring connection here, but it has a hard plastic lip, not a blade, but a lip rather. And it's very interesting. It pushes a lot of water, but you don't always feel the vibration. And I found it strange, hard to get used to, and not quite worth the time investment to get to know. So unfortunately, I didn't really give it a fair chance. I do have another one in like a green pumpkin type of color that I'm keeping. So I was going to give away that white one to just let somebody have a chance to maybe enjoy it if possible. The other one was this Guggen Squad jerkbait called the Scout. It's got a pretty cool body design to it, and sharp hooks, a little bit small perhaps. This is a yellow perch pattern, but the rattles inside are not, they don't transfer forward. There's no weight transfer system. There's just, I'm not sure if you can see, but there's some balls that kind of go side to side. So you get this sound. A lot like the, oh, what's the other jerkbait like that? It's going to drive me wild. It's the Rapala Shadow Wrap. Listen to this. So it doesn't, the rattles don't go forward really, but rather side to side. Whereas with most, right, you get that much louder sound of the weight transferring forward. So first impressions of that Guggen bait Scout were kind of meh. I just bought it because I felt like it that day. Not quite sure why, if we're being honest. I also bought one of these. This is the Mike Bucca Baby Bullshad. It's actually not just Mike Bucca. It's a collaboration between him and Ketchco. So he doesn't make these. His thing is that he hand makes all of his baits from wood. This is a hard plastic bait though. His baits normally cost, $50 to $100 a bait. And here's a signature thing of his is this like what would you even call this? This like hair style tail. And so he helped design this bait, and Catchco and Mystery Tackle Box ended up helping distribute them. So they're like $15 a pop, and I think are for working a little bit faster in the higher part of the water column. Just picked up one of these, and while I was at it, kind of bought a few other things. You know, a pack of Guggen baits and a pack of the Scout, or that Scout jerk bait, and one or two other things. You know, Tokyo rig or something like that. So anyway, sometimes that happens, and I'm not quite sure why. So I was gonna give away that jerk bait just for the sake of it, not because I like it or don't like it. But anyway. Sorry to ramble a bit. Simon says, I meant to you. Okay, dude, sounds good. Yeah, Simon, you can donate lures to me too if you want. Again, kind of depends on what it is. I hate to say that I'm picky at this point, but um, in general, I'd be very interested unless you're just doing some closet cleaning and it's stuff that I already know and don't like. I've got a fair amount of that stuff to do myself, but don't really know how to get rid of that stuff. I'm not really proud to post it. Don't want to give it away formally. Um, so I'll find the right kid eventually who's just getting into fishing, and I'll give that stuff away to him. But if you've got some cool lures that you once got for one reason or another, that you think I might enjoy or find special or like showing on the show here or fishing with, by all means, feel free to donate. Get in touch with me via Instagram or here on YouTube. Send me a message, and let's talk about that. Also, you can always send me an email. Ryan says, just a reminder, make sure you hit the like button. Hey, appreciate that, Ryan. Yeah, everybody who's in here, there's 7 of you. There's 4 thumbs up. If you wouldn't mind, hit that thumbs up button, please. Justin says, it's like the bottom of a broom. It is like the bottom of a broom, that tail. Riley says, I had a lot of hard baits. You have or did have? Justin says, Bree, I'm a kid just getting into bass fishing. Oh, can I hit that love button? You know, Simon, I wish there was a love button, but there ain't, you know? All right, guys, let's talk about spring soft plastics, specifically pre-spawn soft plastics. We talked a little bit about this in past weeks, but we're just gonna dive a little bit further in, and I'm gonna talk about a crap ton of baits tonight. We're just gonna kind of rifle through a lot of stuff. So this is not super organized, but I'm gonna talk about a lot of stuff that I like, that's new to me, that's new to the market, that I'm excited to try this year, and I may or may not talk about some stuff that I don't like. All right, Riley, appreciate you. So, first and foremost is the Zoom Super Fluke, right? The Fluke is the deal. Most people know that a jerk bait in the spring is killer. A soft jerk bait is just as effective as a hard one. So the most classic is the Zoom Salty Super Fluke. This is a 5-inch bait and has this split belly. Best way to rig it, this is per Tactical Bassins advice, is on a 4-aught Gamakatsu Superline EWG hook. You'll see that it goes most of the way back. This is a good fit without being too big for the bait. You see I've got it buried into the head here, which will allow the bait to fall a little bit more horizontally. You can rig it so that the line tie of the hook is actually out the nose, and it will want to dive nose first. And that can be appropriate at certain times of the year, but I like it to fall more horizontally. Now this heavier wire hook, the Superline EWG from Gamakatsu, is crucial with the Fluke because it allows for a slightly faster fall rate. The other hook that I like, but not as much on the Super Fluke itself, is the Mustad Grip Pin EWG, and I'll throw it on the other few fluke style baits that I throw. And one is Strike King KVD Perfect Plastics Caffeine Shad. I guess first of all, before we talk about the different baits, talk about colors and how I'm relatively simple most of the time, you know, when it comes to the super fluke. I throw the green pumpkin to imitate a bluegill. I'll sometimes dip the tail in chartreuse or use dye for the belly, put some orange or chartreuse there. And then I throw a white. I find that white is a good shad imitator, and there's a lot that you can do if you want to doctor it up, paint it. You know, I feel a little bit inspired having watched Epic Eric on Smallmouth Crush's channel recently, and everything he does with nail polish makes me really interested to get a few different types of nail polish, not just chartreuse and red and orange, but a couple of like sparkly types to put on a simple bait like this, or one that's like the blue glimmer, something that's a little bit more translucent, and then put some different types of sparkle on there after the fact. I think that could be a cool deal. So just green pumpkin and white are the main two colors I throw. Pink is this bubblegum fluke is one that I bought this year just when they were on sale for, you know, $1.88 a pack at Cabela's, and thought, I've heard that people slay them on bubblegum flukes, so thought I'd maybe make a special YouTube video about that, just going out and trying to catch them on that bait one day. So the super fluke is a killer little twitch bait. Taj, just an Aussie, or I'm an Aussie and I use the knowledge from you. Hey, appreciate it, Taj. I wish I was familiar with Australia. I've been there once in my life, and it was pretty much just on a beach vacation, so I'm not very familiar with the country, but I would be curious to know whereabouts you are in the country and what you fish for and what kind of lures you're using, because some of these baits will certainly come into play for you, but if you're saltwater fishing a lot, you'll want to pay attention to which ones are, you know, made from elastic materials, and I'll talk about those. So good to have you on, though. Appreciate it, man. Riley, yes, bubblegum fluke. Pink baits will do it. I've got a few other pink baits in here. May or may not talk about them, but yeah, pink is especially a killer trout color for smaller baits, but I hear that largies will go for pink and for chartreuse, and smallies love chartreuse too. So I think chartreuse is a sleeper color. But anyway, next bait is the Caffeine Shad from Strike King. This is a different profile bait. This is a 5-inch. They do make it in a 4-inch, but you can see it's got a flat bottom. So it's going to have a really interesting glide, but a faster fall to it. It's really salty, so it rips up a little bit faster than a standard super fluke, but it is a heavy bait and it falls quite a bit faster. So while I've got the scale here, let me weigh this out for you. Just a full bait and a full bait so you can see what they weigh, what the difference is. So a Zoom Super Fluke is 8 grams pretty much on the dot, and a 5-inch Caffeine Shad is almost 12 grams. So pretty significant difference there, almost 50% heavier with that Caffeine Shad. So you end up fishing the Caffeine Shad a little bit deeper, and you fish it faster than you would a fluke. So I would throw the fluke more this time of year and the Caffeine Shad more during the summer, quite frankly. As you can see here, I've got a Caffeine Shad in white rigged up on a Rage Blade from Strike King. This is one of their vibrating jigs that I actually really like. So I throw that white pearl and I throw the bluegill color from Strike King. And then lastly, I throw this Strike King Zero. And this is an Elastec bait that they make, or that they rather have Z-Man make for them. And here again, I've got it rigged on the Mustad grip pin hook. So let me show you what that looks like. Doesn't look like much, but this little keeper here, just that little nubbin, does a remarkable job of holding baits on there. So Justin says nail polish on soft baits. Yeah, man. Zoom Super Fluke kicks butt. Yeah, absolutely. Taj Cassidy says the bubblegum fluke works for Mangrove Jack in Queensland, Sunshine Coast. Okay. Smaller the bait, the better. Interesting. Z-Man Shrimps works good too. So smaller baits are better, huh? While we're on the topic of flukes, Taj, you should look up this bait if you don't already know it. The Z-Man Streaks 375. This is a fluke style bait that is much smaller. The other one that's similar is the Strike King Baby Z2. So right now we're talking about the Z2, Strike King Z2, okay? This is their fluke style bait, and it does sink. So interestingly, you're going to get a similar sink rate as a standard fluke, but like the Z-Man jerk shads and other baits don't sink nearly as fast. So this is a pretty cool bait that you can work fairly fast. And I wanted to show you how to rig it up real quick, if I could. Sometimes these things don't go the way you plan. So you kind of have to pull the bait up over and sit right onto that keeper. And then it's got kind of like a hook slot on top. Makes it really easy to expose. And this grip pin EWG almost has a slight downward point to it. So it makes it very easy to expose a soft plastic like this. So you can throw a fluke into super heavy cover. You can let it suspend there for a second in front of fish that are just either cruising or kind of hanging out there. And you can make this very erratic up higher and in the middle of the water column. So a fluke is a killer bait in the spring. I throw this bait in, I've got it in two colors right now. This is the baby bass color. And this is the color called the deal. That's actually a Z-Man color. But like I said, Z-Man pours these Elastec soft plastics for Strike King. Strike King makes a couple of those baits. So a fluke is a go-to spring soft plastic for sure. Ryan says, I picked up some of the streaks, haven't tried them yet. Hope to use them this spring for walleye and pike, hopefully for bass when I make the drive to the Bass Lake. Taj says, you're the best American person I know through technology. Hey, appreciate it, Taj. Very nice of you to say that. So we're going to just move on from flukes. I talked about, 3 different soft plastic flukes that I like to throw, or soft plastic jerk baits, I should say, rather. And one of them was this Elastec bait, but the Strike King Z2 and Baby Z2. So I think the Baby Z2 is right about the same size as the Z-Man Streaks 375. Now, as for action, I can't quite tell you. I can tell you the Baby Z2 has a little bit more salt in it. And my guess is it's going to sink a little bit faster and be better for this application as a jerk bait, a little bit more erratic action, whereas the Streaks 375 is still going to have a bait fish profile, but might behave better on a drop shot. And it is going to be just a little bit more buoyant. So just my 2 cents, and I could even be wrong on that. So take it with a grain of salt. Okay. Next on the list that I wanted to talk about after flukes are wobbleheads. Now, I don't know when we've most recently talked about wobbleheads, but since we're talking about soft plastics specifically tonight, I wanted to mention some of these baits that are good substitute baits. So ordinarily, I'd recommend that you throw a crankbait to dig bottom, but a wobblehead, kind of like a chatterbait, is a good substitution for a crankbait for different applications. So here are a couple wobbleheads that I throw. One is the one made by Freedom Tackle. Yeah, they've got this funky owner hook on here that I kind of like, but am considering swapping it out. And it is super simple to swap it out. That's the thing about these Freedom Tackle. If you check it out here, inside the head of the bait is this system where you can twist the hook literally right off. I wish you could see that better. And so what's cool is you can put on tiny hooks. You can switch the profile of the bait that you're throwing very, very easily and maintain the weight and the depth and all of that. You still get the same action just with a different bait. So the Freedom Tackle one is one I throw, and the other is kind of the Pioneer, the OG. This is the Jean LaRue Biffle Hardhead. So this is to be paired up with the Biffle Bug, but I actually don't throw the Biffle Bug on a wobblehead, and not for any reason specifically, but rather just because I throw other baits that I think have multiple purposes, and I like versatility. So I do like the hardhead, though. It doesn't have durable paint, but it does transmit feel pretty well, and it does have a really good owner hook on there, kind of a medium wire. Like that a lot. I throw it. It comes in 3 different sizes, and I throw all 3 of those sizes depending on the depth of the water that I'm fishing. But I really like to throw a wobblehead on a riprap bank if I'm trying to cover water more so. A fluke is still a good way to cover water, but like I said, up higher in the water column, that wobblehead is going to be more for bottom contact, but still as a search bait more than anything. You can cover a lot of water with it. So let's talk about soft plastics for a wobblehead. You could throw craws or creatures. I like to throw creatures more so. Something that's going to kick a little bit more. Though it does depend on the time of year and the temperature of the water, of course. So the earlier you're fishing this bait, the less action you want it to have. So, the Zoom Z-Craw is pretty tough to beat. This is a great bait for this application specifically. The Reaction Innovations Man Bear Pig is a great one. The Zoom Brush Hog, or the Zoom Baby Brush Hog, is a good one. And then, of course, Strike King Rage Bug, Guggen Baits Bandito Bug are great options as well. If you're, while we're at it in talking about creature and beaver style baits. Um, there are a ton of other options. I really like the spicy beaver from Reaction Innovations that I just don't have in this box with me. So the Reaction Innovations Spicy Beaver, the Kitech Crazy Flapper. Talked a lot about that in the last couple of shows. I would throw it on the 3.6 or maybe even the 4.4 inch, which is substantially bigger. And then, of course, you can't go wrong with the Berkley Pit Boss, which we also talked about recently. So that's kind of a lot of different baits to throw at you for wobble heads that are all pretty similar. If you think about it, some have just a little bit more action than others, but all of them are kind of mid-sized to larger profile, kicking beaver style baits with a medium amount of action, right? Jason Jackson, what up? Riley says, I had a friend who makes homemade flukes. One side is black and blue, and the other side is red and black. It's killer. Who would know that would work? I actually believe it would work. That's pretty sweet. Simon, good night, man. Sorry, he's probably already gone by now, but good night to you, Simon. God bless you as well. All right. Taj says that's what's up. Not sure what you were talking about when you say that's what's up, but maybe a wobblehead. Riley says love reaction baits. And Ray's just going, maybe looking at them baits. So, yeah, I love soft plastic baits in that sort of category. And there's other baits that you can throw on a wobblehead. Don't get me wrong. You can throw a lot of different stuff on a wobblehead, but I like something that's gonna run a little bit flatter, not get hung up too much. So when you get those added appendages and you get kind of a rounder, thicker body, it's gonna run just a little bit more different. So I like something that's flatter. I would prefer the Rage Bug to the Rage Menace Grub for that reason, just because it's going to run better along the bottom. Ray, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. Yo, yo, yo. Hope you're doing well tonight. So, like I said, I wouldn't throw the Rage Menace Grub. I wouldn't throw the Rage Craw on a wobblehead. I throw it more on a jig or on a Texas rig. You could throw the Biospawn Vile Craw or Vile Bug. I think the Vile Bug would actually be really good on a wobblehead. It's got those holes in the body that allow for air. It kind of makes air bubbles as it's swimming by. So I think that one's really cool. And then this might be a little bit small, but like I said, depending on what size hook you're using, I think this Zoom Ultra Vibe Speed Craw is an awesome choice. You get kind of that medium amount of action, a little bit more subtle of a bait. Zoom Ultra Vibe Speed Craw is a bait that everybody's got to have. So if you don't have some, get you some. They're an awesome value. They come 12 to a pack and are like $4. And I carry them in watermelon, green pumpkin, and that blue sapphire I just showed you. So I do too, Ray. Jason says, I have a friend who's trying to start fishing. Should I tell him to start with soft plastics or with crankbaits? Soft plastics for sure, man. For sure. Russ Dennis, what's up, man? We are doing well in here. How about you? You're gonna be ripping some lips tomorrow? Right on. What are you fishing for? Are you fishing for bass or something else? And what kind of baits are you throwing tomorrow, Russ? Riley, who doesn't love speed craws? I don't know. Awesome bait for sure. Okay, so let's move on from the wobblehead. Like I said, creatures and craws would be my bait to go with. Now, Z-Man baits, we talked about some flukes, but wobblehead baits, there aren't any that I love in that category. Okay, and I hate to admit it to you. There's two baits, and I told you this last time or the time before, but the palmetto bugs and the what's the other one? The boar hogs. The boar hogs are the two creature baits. The palmetto bugs is a beaver style bait made for flipping, and the boar hogs is um, it's a creature bait, but it's more like a brush hog style bait. So it's got more flappy appendages, and both of those baits, I just don't love the way that they're stored in the packaging. The integrity of the baits gets messed up. They get smashed together. They get a little bit bent up, and they fish funky. And that confidence is everything, when it comes to the baits that you're using. So I found after trying them that it's just not worth the hassle and the stress about how many in that package are holding up like I would want or expect them to. So I just don't really use Z-Man baits for that. But I don't think I really missed any. One that I would throw in some situations to size up. If you know there's big fish around, a few different baits that you could definitely consider throwing. I already mentioned the 4.4-inch Kitech Crazy Flapper. That is a big bait right there. The 4.5-inch Magnum Rage Bug and the 5-inch Pit Boss, Papa Pit Boss. Okay, just for the sake of it, just because we're messing around, I'll show you guys how big these baits are. And if you can get a wobblehead with a 5/0 hook in it, or if you use that Freedom Tackle head and you throw a 5/0 or a 6/0 hook in one of these guys, you're in the money and you're gonna scare away little fish. So these baits right here, let me show you the Rage Bug. This is the 4-inch in the chameleon color. Isn't that gorgeous, by the way? Here's the 4.5-inch Magnum Rage Bug. Quite a bit bigger. It's got a fat body. This one looks a little jacked up. Which, as I just explained, kind of chaps my booty. This one looks pretty perfect. So this is Blue Craw Red Flake. Pretty sweet color. Big bait here. Okay. Here is the 4.4-inch Kitech Crazy Flapper. Big bait that I would pretty much only throw by itself. I'm rarely going to throw this as a jig trailer. You'd have to cut off like a full inch of the bait to make it a good jig trailer. And then you're going to have this really oversized kicker on it. Of course you could, but I really like this on a Texas rig. And I like it on a wobblehead like this. And I actually do like it as a punch bait too. It has just a wild amount of action. So it draws an absurd amount of attention on the fall. Lastly, here's the 5-inch Pit Boss. This thing is giant. Now, of course, just like other baits that don't come in clamshells, you see this claw is twisted up, and that kind of happens. It comes with the territory. This is still fishable for sure, but could be worse than that. So these baits are absolutely gigantic and, tough for a small fish to actually eat. Now you can catch a 2 pounder on a 5-inch bait for sure, uh, but you're going to make it more worth the while for a big fish to eat a meal like this when you're throwing a big hunk of plastic at them. So keep that in mind for the future and give some of those baits a look. I have been more interested in these magnum size baits as of late, and part of it's just because striking has been playing around with sizes the last year or two, and so this Magnum Rage Bug came out just 2 years ago, and you get 6 in a pack compared to a standard Rage Bug. You get 7 in a pack, and they're the same price. So I love playing around, and that's one thing worth justifying for sure. I've made this point before, but there's some baits where it makes sense, and some baits where it really doesn't make sense to do that. Where you get fewer in the pack and you pay a lot more. Like the Senko is the perfect example. Gary Yamamoto Senko, the 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, I think you get 10 in a pack, right? And then the 6-inch and 7-inch, you get 5 in a pack, and it gets more expensive. So you go from spending 60 cents a bait to spending like $1.30 a bait or something like that, $1.50 a bait. So it gets out of hand pretty quick. You end up spending twice as much or more on the 6-inch Senko, which would be my preference. We are going to talk about stick baits just a little bit, but as I mentioned last week, I like this 6-inch Bass Pro Shops Sticko. I find that it's got a really good action. I'm not going to say that it's Yamamoto Senko action, but it's got a pretty pronounced shimmy to it and a relatively fast fall rate, especially with the 6-inch size compared to the 5-inch that everybody else would be throwing. And they're super cheap. The Stickos you can get like 16 in a pack for, I don't know, like $6, right? So they're really affordable and a great stick bait, and pretty much the only one that I've thrown the last handful of years. Now that's not totally true, but anyway, we'll talk about it. Russ Dennis, sight fishing, bass, drop shot, and Texas rigs. Okay, Russ, right on. I think we are going to talk about both of those. Texas rig, there's a lot of overlap with the baits that we already talked about. I think the Rage Tail structure bug, Strike King Rage bug is my favorite on a Texas rig, and when fishing up shallow. If you guys don't already know, I'm giving away a pack of the white Rage bugs in this month's giveaway coming up in my spawn fishing giveaway. It's going to be centered around the spawn. I'm going to tell you guys more about that giveaway here toward the end of this stream, but yeah, that Rage bug is absolutely killer. You should have some white baits on you, man. You could also talk about drop shots for sure. So Ray says, did you mention the Z-Craw for the swing head? Absolutely, man. It was the first one I mentioned. Riley, I think you did. There are a lot of baits out there. Yep. Russ, 5/0 super hook on those bad boys. Yeah, dude. There's some big baits. Gotta have a 5/0 or that 6/0 Gamakatsu. What's it called? EWG monster hook. That's a good one for sure. Riley, surprisingly, never tried a wobblehead. It's been on my my get list for a while. Interesting. Yeah, it's a cool crankbait alternative. When you're wanting to to bounce the bottom. Um, you got to keep it moving though. You know, it's not going to float back up like a lot of crankbaits will. Ray says, I'm not sure if it matters, but since last year, I've been particularly fond of the green pumpkin purple color. No, it doesn't matter, but it matters for you for sure. Green pumpkin purple swirl is a new color that Strike King is making that I am pumped about. I had that Magnum Rage Bug in my cart from Bass Pro Shops. I still do. In that green pumpkin purple swirl. Looks like a really cool color. BJ Harris, what is going on, man? Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well tonight. Russ, I'll be using the Rage Tail. Right on, man. Good for you. That would be a good one to be throwing. You know, if you've got the smaller sizes, they'd be good on a drop shot, but anything Z-Man would be awesome on a drop shot. Or, of course, Robo Worm or a bunch of other worms. We are going to come around to a drop shot at the end of this stream. But you tell me whether you're going to be in here in an hour or not. Maybe we'll get around to it sooner than that. Justin, did you leave and just pop back in or what, man? Ray, you're not doing too well, man? Russ, the Robo Shad. That one right there, the Alive Shad. It's a pretty cool bait. Just recently picked up a couple packs of that. I think I'm going to slay on this perch color in one or two of the bodies of water that I fish for smallies. That also have some good walleye population. So looking forward to killing them on that. But I really hope you do well tomorrow, man. Anyway, let's move on from that because that was a little bit of an offshoot. After wobbleheads are swim baits. Okay. I would throw flukes. I would throw wobbleheads. I would throw swim baits. And there are a lot of different ways to throw swim baits and a lot of different swim baits that I like to throw, obviously, as you know. So it's hard to really narrow it down because for the most part, at this time of year, we're doing shallow water fishing, and we're out of the super cold water winter fishing where we're just slow creeping a big bait on bottom. We're moving baits a little bit faster now, and you have more flexibility in terms of what baits you want to throw and how fast you want to throw them. The way you rig them makes a big difference too, right? And there are tons of different options for you. So I will quickly run through one more time the baits that I like to throw, and then we can talk about a few of the ways that I prefer to rig them. Justin, I'm not going to tell you a joke right now, but that's an interesting recommendation. Why do you suggest that? Ray says, hey, Flukes, tried one today using a tiny swivel. Any luck on it today, man? Rayski? It was odd, says Ray. Huh. Well, maybe we could talk another time about why that was odd. Fishing a fluke. But anyway, as for swim baits, Z-Man, specifically the diesel minnows, I like. Ray says, no, we had those tornadoes come through yesterday. Okay, so Z-Man makes the diesel minnows. The 4-inch, as we talked about last week, is the most versatile. It is what I would throw as a trailer on a lot of baits, on a chatterbait, on a swim jig, even on just an exposed jig head as a standalone finesse swim bait. Would be great on an Alabama rig too. The 5 inch um, is a great standalone swim bait, kind of a medium size, medium large profile. Really, this is the equivalent of like a 4.8 inch Kitech. You get kind of a nice medium action out of this bait. Okay, uh, it has that narrower profile of what would be like a more subtle swim bait, but then it has a very medium amount of tail kick. This is an awesome bait, and of course, it is super durable. They make it in a 7 inch as well. I haven't thrown that bait yet, but do have a pack of them and look forward to throwing them this year. So you can throw these weedless or exposed. Also, like a standard paddle tail swim bait, um, like the Kitech. Here I've got a 6.8 inch. I throw these all the way from the 2.8 inch. I've really stepped up to the 3.3 as the smallest size that I throw, but I throw it in the 3.3, the 3.8, the 4.8, 5.8, and this 6.8 size. But this is a standard soft plastic, full-bodied swim bait, if you will, paddle tail. Now, there's a ton of tail action on this bait, so you get a lot more action out of it. You can slow roll it in slow water, but if you are swimming it a little bit faster, it's going to have much more aggressive kick on it. The Rage Swimmer by Strike King is the same exact bait, just a blatant copy of this. They don't make it in the big size like this. They did just come out with their biggest size now is the 5.75 inch, which is the same as the Kitech 5.8, right? This rainbow shad is my color. And the 5.8 inch size is probably my favorite size overall. This is a big bait without being super overpowering. That 6.8 inch really feels like a big bait, and it weighs a significant amount on its own. So the 5.8 inch is a nice step up from the 4.8 inch, which I think is what most people are throwing, who are trying to attract relatively big fish. But the 5.8 is an awesome step up without not being overly big, okay? Now the 6.8 inch is a big bait, for sure. And I would compare it to a couple of the other big soft plastic baits that I throw. This is the 7-inch Megabass Spark Shad. This is the 6-inch Optimum Boom Boom. And this is the 6.5-inch Beast Coast Creep. All four of these are large soft plastic swim baits. They all weigh, over an ounce, some pushing 2 ounces without a hook in them. And then with baits this big, you have to throw really an 8/0 or bigger. Weighted hook is going to give you better stability. If you're throwing a beast hook that doesn't have a weight, the bait is going to tend to roll a little bit to one side, especially if the tail is not perfectly not kinked. So I always prefer to throw a weighted hook on here. And, like the beast hook and the 8/0, I think they do make a 3/8. That's about as light as you're going to find. Otherwise, the 9/0 Trocar, the 10/0 Beast come in a ½ ounce is the lightest that they make. The VMC, same deal, ½ ounce. So I throw all of those for, big action, big fish. I also like the Megabass Mag Draft Freestyle. Like that bait a lot. The last ones that I would certainly mention, aside from the Spark Shad, again, Megabass Spark Shad in the 5-inch is one of my favorite swim baits right now. But the Scottsboro Tackle hand poured swim baits are really tough to beat. So there are a lot of really good soft plastic swim baits that you ought to throw or consider having in your arsenal. And there are a lot of different ways to throw them, but I usually like to throw them weedless. I throw around shallow, heavier cover the majority of the time. So I'd prefer, a weedless weighted swim bait hook like that compared to an exposed jig head, which is always an option. I mentioned last week that I recently picked up these 1 ounce 8-aught swim bait hooks from 6 cents. This is the Divine swim bait head, and I like that one a lot. So what I didn't actually notice personally as much until I really saw it on a live stream. Maybe it was today or yesterday from the Hookup Tackle. Ben was showing the difference of baits with just a standard weighted swim bait hook versus one with a flashy swimmer or a blade attached to it. And the main thing that he wanted to point out was the fact that when there's a blade on there, it allows you to run the bait much deeper, more easily. You have to do a lot more work to keep the bait up high in the water column versus if you've got just that standard beast hook, it's a lot easier to fish it high in the water column. You can still control it and fish it slower and lower, of course, but when you add that blade on there, that resistance allows the bait to run lower with much more ease. So, something to think about when you've got, same bait and a couple different hooks, right? This is the Owner Beast 8-aught, and this right here is the VMC, I don't know, maybe it's the 11-aught bladed hook. On that 7-inch Spark Shad. So, yeah, like I mentioned, the 6 cents Divine swim bait head is probably one of my favorites. After that, I'd step all the way down and I'd use something like the VMC boxer head. That is this guy here. Goodness gracious. And they make this head in much bigger sizes, but it's a very simple head. Nice collar on there and a good stiff hook. I really like that boxer head jig, if not throwing like a round ball jig by Gamakatsu. So 6 cents Divine swim bait head is like my number one for swim bait heads. Otherwise, I rig weedless a lot of the time, and I like to throw Owner and Trocar as my main weedless hooks, both standard and bladed. And I've talked before that I like the gap and the hook just a little bit better on the Trocar swim blade than I do the owner flashy swimmer, and that's just personal preference in terms of where the weight is placed on the hook itself and the way that the hook is set up, the angle of the hook, and the gauge, the wire of the hook itself. So just personal preferences. I also like um, the Jackal Rhythm Wave. Really cool swim bait. The Beast Coast Miyagi swimmer is a really cool swim bait. So um, hopefully that's enough to confuse you. Throw a good 15 swim baits at you, all in the soft plastic category and all slightly larger. Of course, we could get into talking finesse swim baits, and that's almost a completely separate category. But in the springtime, I think you can really up your chances of catching big fish by throwing bigger baits. So throwing a soft plastic swim bait in the 4, 5, 6, 7 inch range, I think gives you a good chance. So depending on where you're fishing, you either throw it exposed or you throw it weedless, and you'll get into some big ones. Now, I do really like the added blade there. You can start to flirt with different lure categories like a spinner bait, which we're talking strictly soft plastics right now. We're not talking spinner baits, and I like to get creative and get away from throwing traditional lures like spinner baits, mostly just because I think they're old school and not all that interesting or that fun to fish. So I do like to branch out. There are lures like this, from Z-Man. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know this bait. This is the Quadzilla, and it's like an Alabama rig type of deal where you've got this head and then 4 wires going out to the bottom, the top, and both sides that all have blades, and then just a lure on the back. And this is like a swim jig essentially. And I've got a swim bait trailer on here, a Kitech Swing Impact swim bait. No trailer hook on it right now, but this is kind of a cool alternative to a spinner bait. The whole thing is very manageable weight wise, weighs like less than an ounce, completely rigged up. So I like to mix it up, switch it up, but we're not talking about baits like this right now. And we're not talking hard baits or other moving baits. We're talking soft plastics. So I do like to throw a spinner blade, an underspin wherever possible. Okay, let's move on from swim baits after I mentioned just a couple things in here. Guys talking about Taj being an Aussie. No, Ryan, I didn't check out the video from Clayton Schick yet, but I appreciate you leaving that comment, and I will get around to checking that out at some point for sure. Justin, this is the best entertainment you've had all week. Man, that's too bad. All right. What did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss? Yeah, Taj is an Aussie. Aussie. Riley, we're part of the fishing fam. That's what's up. Old school is good. I agree, Taj, and that's again another conversation for another time. I get caught up in the new stuff, right? So I agree that old is good. Spinner baits will always have their place, as will a lot of old school rigs that have kind of gone out of style. Some have come back in and gone back out, but I like to be kind of one step ahead of the game. I like to fish what is new. I like to try new and different things. So it's while I have a lot of respect for certain anglers like say Jimmy Houston or Roland Martin, for example, I just that's not my style. Unless I was fishing for a living and I knew that a buzz bait or a spinner bait or a Senko was how I could catch a limit and how I could get what I needed. Um, I like mixing it up, dude. I want to try new things. I want to do what is fun and interesting and see if I can catch fish on something that is different than what everybody else is doing. I bet you the fish have not seen something like this before. Most of the fish that I fish around haven't seen Alabama rigs, and I just don't want to throw an Alabama rig. I don't want the hassle of it. I don't want to have to store them. I don't want to have to pay to rig one up and risk losing all of that. Like a single Alabama rig can cost you, $30, um, or more to just rig up. So, uh, plus I feel a little bit mixed about the concept of a standard A rig in the first place, where you've got 3 or 5 hooks on there. But different story. Let's move on from swim baits. Let's talk about stick baits. This is a shorter category for me. Like I said, there's only a couple stick baits that I throw, period. Um, when we're talking Senko style baits. And I actually don't really throw the Gary Yamamoto Senko myself. Of course, I've got this in a wild color. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 stick baits here. By the way, I skipped 2 swim baits that I wanted to show you. One was that Scottsboro. I saw that it was just messed up in the package and I didn't put it away, so wanted to show this to you. This is a bait that I've talked about before, and I think you guys really need to check out. Super, super high quality, awesome colors. The plastic is just, it's really hard to explain how nice these swim baits are. And it's got this hook slot. This one I haven't pulled out yet. I believe I have this other one. Once you open the hook slot, look at that, how deep that is. It goes all the way to the top. So you barely have to pierce any plastic to rig this up. Makes durability a lot better in the long run. If you've got a little bit of mend it, you can make one of these last a surprisingly long time. But really good head action and tail kick on these guys. This is the 6-inch in the Rainbow Trout. It comes in a 2-pack here. The 5-inch is also really cool, and it comes in a 3-pack. I've got it here in like a perch bluegill type of pattern, and really look forward to throwing these baits this year. Yeah, they call it custom gill. Not going to pull that out right now, but these soft plastics are wicked. Really, really high quality over at Scottsboro Tackle. And then this was actually per my curiosity, I got a pack of these just to try them, but then Tactical Bassin talked about them after the fact, and had really interesting and good things to say about this bait. So where my initial impressions were not very good, I changed my mind on it and opened my mind very quickly. I trust what Tactical Bassin says quite a bit, but check out this bait. This is the River to Sea D Walker. This is in the larger size, the 120. So this is like a 5-inch bait, like a 4.8. And if you notice, most swim baits would be shaped kind of like this, right? A little bit wider at the top and then more hole shaped, tapering down at the belly. This bait here is actually reversed. So it's like flat on bottom and round on top. and it gives this bait a really, really interesting action that as it swims, it also kind of does this up and down motion, um, which looks super funky. But Tactical Bassin posted some underwater footage of it. It's actually really cool. Look how um, thin this tail area is, and it's just the last 10% of the bait that is tail, right? And the thing is, this plastic is super hard, soft plastic. So it feels like it's too hard that you would not be able to, if you've got it rigged weedless, for example, which I did one time, and it feels like the plastic is too stiff to really move the hook, set the hook up through the plastic. So it feels like it would be better on an exposed hook, snip the nose off and rig it, or put it as a trailer on a buzzbait, for example, or something else like that. But I'm a little bit confused about how to fish this bait, but Tactical Bassin has said some really good things about it and are throwing it a lot right now. So I feel like I need to give it a fair chance. I bought it because it was just one of those baits from last year. Not sure if it was the Bassmaster Classic or iCast, but it was a new release last year, and I'm a sucker for new releases. So let me say, River to Sea D Walker 120 comes in a 3-pack for $5. So I was able to justify that a little bit too easily when buying other stuff from Tackle Warehouse anyway. So now on to stick baits. Just kidding. One more swim bait. One more swim bait just because I've had this sitting out and wanted to show you guys this. Do you guys, any of you guys follow Salt Strong? Salt Strong. Anybody? They're mostly saltwater guys. I think down in Florida, but they've been pretty aggressive on social media the last few years. They do a lot of reviews on gear and on baits and testing different knots and testing gear. Again, a lot of saltwater fishing that they do, but they have a color through Z-Man called the Slam Shady, which is like a white, like a pearl white with some sparkle in it. And there's an interesting recent story where they were selling so much through their insiders club and other people just because it was such a great color that that Z-Man couldn't keep up with the sales for that one color. They had to tie up too many of their machines to producing that one bait. It was like the diesel minnows, I think, the 4-inch diesel minnows, or maybe the 3-inch minnows from Z-Man in that Slam Shady color. They were selling so many packs of them that Z-Man couldn't keep up with the demand. So Salt Strong had to separate with Z-Man and start making their own swim bait. And so they started making a new soft plastic swim bait. Here's what it looks like. And this is actually not a Lastec. So I was a little bit disappointed to find that out. They were giving these away free a couple weeks ago for people wanting to try them. They were trying to promote the product. So you pay a couple bucks shipping. I think it was like $2 or $3, and they'd give you a pack for free. So I did that, and it comes in a pack of 7. Has an interesting scent to it that is pretty strong of anise or like a black licorice. It is that same color, Slam Shady, though it's got a different body style as the minnows or the diesel minnows for sure. This whole section back here is tail. But what's really unfortunate is look how they're stored in here. And inevitably, what happens is you pull one out of the pack and look at this. Totally twisted, bent to the side there. Another one I pull out. and this is holding it straight up and down, twisted. So pretty much the entire pack of baits is ruined straight out of the pack, and that doesn't happen with the diesel minnows. They're in a little bit of a package holding their integrity, and of course they last forever. So these new Salt Strong Slam Shady baits, I gotta say, unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed with them because you're gonna have to boil the tails to get them to swim right, straight out of the package, and they're also not going to be super durable. You know, you're going to get a couple fish on each one of these baits before they tear. So awesome color, but not an awesome bait, unfortunately. I can't quite stand behind that product. Just wanted to mention that just because it's a little bit of a story. You know, that Slam Shady color, I don't think is going to be made by Z-Man anymore, simply because the guys at Salt Strong are selling it themselves, and I think they maybe have some sort of ownership over the color. So let's move on. Taj, River to Sea is made in Australia? What? Is that a fact, dude? Z-Man Zinkers is so good, and I do follow them. Interesting. I actually don't like the Zinkers very much, but cool that you like it, man. All right, guys, so let's talk about stick baits. Soft plastic, worms. The Yamamoto Senko is kind of the OG. It has the best action. It has a ton of salt in it. It has a medium fast fall rate and just that right shimmy and wiggle on the fall. Though they cost like $7 a pack, and like I said, the 5 inch, 4 inch, 3 inch come in 10 to a pack. So not the most expensive baits, but relatively expensive, and they tear up really easily. So you're only getting one or two fish per bait, and so if you're fishing somewhere where the fish bite pretty easily, a Yamamoto Senko is one of the worst baits that you can throw just because you're not going to get your money's worth. Now, if the bite is super tough and all you need is a bite, or you're in a tournament and you need to to you need a cull, you need a bigger fish, you need a bite right now, time is of the essence, whatever it is, um, it's worth it in those situations. So ordinarily, I opt for the Bass Pro Shops XPS Sticko bait, and they make it, of course, in 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even the 7 inch. I really like it in the 6 inch size. Not so much bigger than the 5 inch, but it is significantly heavier. So you get a faster fall rate, and it is thicker around, so you do get just a little bit better durability. Now, the Bass Pro Shops bait, you get better durability because it's got less salt in it. Yet it weighs a very similar amount as the Senko does. So you get a very similar fall rate. The Yum Dinger, on the other hand, is super, super light, falls really slow. Now, dude in Australia, you mentioned, Taj, you mentioned the Zinkers by Z-Man. A very similar bait that I do throw sometimes is the Strike King Zero. This is a Senko style stick bait that is salted, and it is made from a Laztec. So what I like to do is stretch this out, get all the salt out. This changes the bait from, like, look at how much it stretches the bait out once you actually stretch the salt out. It goes from being a 5 inch bait to almost a 6 inch bait, really. Once you get the salt out, the buoyancy goes up. And what I like to do with this bait is put it on a weighted wacky rig. So I like the action of this bait best on a weighted wacky rig. You don't have to stretch it out, but you can. The action is going to get more pronounced and better as it is stretched out. So weighted wacky rig with these Elastec worms is the way that I go. Just because if it's not on a weighted rig, if you throw this on a weightless Texas rig or on a wacky rig, the action is just a little bit funky and it doesn't fall vertically. Elastec baits want to fall at an angle. So you think it's falling like this. You can't see it visually, but really it's falling and it is traveling some distance away from where it landed, and it's unpredictable which direction it's going in. So I actually don't like that about those baits, but if you throw a weighted wacky hook on, it is going to fall more vertical. So keep that in mind. Riley mentioned something. Riley says Yamamoto is a very good bait, but tears very easily. Fished a lot of those during tournaments. I went through 2 packs, but it was worth it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying for sure. There's a time and a place to throw Yamamotos. You know, if money's on the line or you're desperate to get a bite, then throw it, man. I mean, who wouldn't pay a couple bucks to catch a fish, right? So I think they're worth having, but I don't think they're necessary most of the time. I find that you can get a very similar action out of a lot of different baits on the market these days. Stick baits have evolved a little bit now that kind of every company makes one. So the Bass Pro Shop Sticko is the main one that I throw, and again in that 6-inch size. Now, I showed you last week this Kitech Salty Core Stick. That's a bait that I have thrown before, but don't throw very frequently. One that I do like, but more so on a Nico rig than on a wacky rig, but I do like it rigged both ways, is this Zoom Magnum Finesse Worm. Okay, this is a 5-inch bait, and it's relatively fat. It's got a slight taper to it and a bulbous tail. It stands up pretty well, but it also has some good weight to it. Has a good wacky rig action. So like that. And then also kind of another sleeper is the Robo Worm 4.5-inch Ned Worm. This one has more of a subtle wacky rig action to it, but it's got a lot of weight to it. And of course, it's got those Robo Worm colors. Really, really good. But that is like a big Ned bait. They make the smaller 3-inch Robo Worm Ned Worm. And then they make this larger 4.5-inch size of the same bait. And I find that the 3-inch is awesome on a Ned rig or rigged wacky on a drop shot. And this 4.5-inch is awesome as just a weightless wacky rig. Could be good on a weightless Texas rig, but I like this on a Nico rig and on a shaky head as well. So the other stick bait that I like throwing, and I've talked about recently, and I'm about to pick up some more packs of, is the 6th Sense Clout 5.4. I'm sure Ray's going to love me talking about this right now, so I should catch up on the comments. But this right here is the dark water bug color. It's got that purple with blue flake bottom and kind of this black top. This is an awesome alternative to a standard black and blue. This is a 5.5-inch bait, so right in between that 5 and 6-inch size, but it is a little bit thinner of a profile, and it does taper the entire way. So This is a little bit skinnier of a bait than a standard stick worm, and it does have this kind of ribbing or texturing to it all throughout the body. So as you can see, me just holding it here, it bends pretty well. And as I move it, it has a ton of wiggle to it. So underwater, this bait puts off a lot of action and displaces a significant amount of water. So really cool stick bait here put out by 6 Cents in the last year. And this dark water bug color has been mostly sold out for the last year. And so I'm looking to get another pack of these and try out a couple of other colors here shortly. But that is going to be a go-to wacky rig, weightless wacky rig bait for me here in 2020 for sure. Okay, so Russ says you'll definitely save a Senko by wacky rigging with an O-ring over the bait. Absolutely. Totally agree, Russ. You can get a couple more fish out of every Senko that you fish wacky rigged by using an O-ring. Gotta have it for sure. My wacky rig tool is somewhere here on the table. Justin, what time of the year do you throw a Senko and what conditions? You can throw a Senko year round, dude, but specifically you can throw them in the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn when the fish are up shallow, when they're roaming or they're protecting. So either when they're feeding up or when they're defending their nest are good times for sure. And then, of course, when fish are holding tight to cover in the summertime is an awesome time to throw a wacky rig bait right next to specific pieces of cover. Just throw it right next to a target that you think a fish is holding to, and that wiggle is going to get the fish to come out and snatch it. So, it's the allure of the fall, especially on a weightless wacky rig. You throw a weighted wacky rig a little bit more when you're fishing vertically or deeper water, or you want that faster fall and more aggressive action. So I would throw a weighted wacky rig typically in deeper water or warmer water, summer conditions, and I'd throw a weightless wacky rig or Senko style bait in the spring. But again, you can throw a Senko anytime, man. Riley, you can use a Texas rig anytime. They have different colors for different water clarities. Fact. Obviously, dark colors for darker water, clearer colors for clearer water. Justin, I'm sorry I'm new to bass fishing. Just need beginner tips. No problem, Justin. Not sure if you're joking or not. Senkos all year round, no problem. Yep. We're all beginners. That's a fact, Riley. Got to be a beginner at some point. Ryan says 2 O-rings in an X pattern. That's true. So there's an idea and something to talk about, guys. I think I can find it. So let's talk about O-rings for a second. And I'll show you on these baits just because they'll be easiest to see right now. But the O-ring, typically what you're going to do when wacky rigging a bait is you're going to push the bait all the way to where it's, halfway or so. That was too far. Very cool. Very, very cool, Tyler. Hoping I'm not going to destroy the bait here as I take the ring off. I can't believe I just botched that. Give me a thumbs up for screwing up an O-ring placement, guys. There's 16 people in here. We got 13 thumbs up. Do appreciate that. But give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, guys. So, one more time. You're going to bring that ring up, and, really, I want the ring to be kind of placed right above the egg sac. So I'm going to bring the tool there, drop that ring on, and voila, we've got an O-ring on our bait, okay? Just to make it extra easy for you guys to see, I'm going to use a red hook right now. So typically, you're going to wacky rig by going just into the plastic and back out. You are mostly hooked into the O-ring and not the plastic itself, okay? So once you set the hook, boom, it's going to go up. The bait's going to go up the line and be intact. You're going to save baits by rigging this way. But you get a slightly different action out of rigging it this way than you do the way that Ryan was talking about. So let's rig it that way. Same location. I'm going to pop that ring on there. I'm going to try and move it so it's at a slight angle here. And then what I'm going to do is put a second ring on right over the same exact spot, okay? And here's the idea. What we're going to do is actually crisscross these rings. Can you guys see that? There's an X here. And what you're going to do is wacky rig going this way, and you're going to go through both O-rings, okay? So now the hook is facing this way versus this way, okay? So think about that as you're fishing the bait. It's just going to travel back to you differently, I think. So I think theoretically there could be a case made for Ryan's rig, right? Where technically you're going to pull the bait up like this. You're going to get a more natural action than if you're fishing it like this. You're going to pull it up and it's going to fall down. I've never really put a lot of thought into that, but I think there could be a case made for the crisscross just by what we saw. And leave a comment if I'm crazy what I'm saying there, or if you agree with me. BJ says Texas rig can be thrown all year as well, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Right about that, BJ, for sure. All right, Ray. Yeah, man, no diggity. We're all learning. Fact. 2 bags of Yamamoto's. I was wondering who makes them. Wait. I have 2 bags of Yamamoto's. I was wondering what makes them get bit so easy. It's the salt, man. It's the action built into the bait. The fall rate of Yamamoto Senkos are not matched. Okay? They're just superior. There's a reason it's like the #1 selling bait on the market. BJ says, that's right, Ray. That's why we're on this live stream with Tyler. What'd you say, 6 cents? Oh my gosh, how far behind on these comments am I? I'm going to have to just start scrolling ahead. All right, I have 2 bags. One is dark with gold glitter, blah, 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 blah. Texture shaker, Senko, slowly dry. Holy crap, guys. You've been flying on these comments. I'm way behind. Ryan says, I've used stick baits as chatterbait trailers before. Super cool action. Yeah, I know that Tackle Junkie does that, but he throws finesse worms, specifically like the Biospawn plasma tail. And I've done that before too, but I've gone to fluke style baits that fill out the profile just a little bit better in the mid part of the bait. Ray says, heard of that too, but never tied it on. Seen a guy do it with black duct tape as well. What? All right, rubber band works. Cheaper. All right, you guys are talking about O-rings and other solutions, rubber bands. Fair enough. Yeah, man. BJ, using the two O-rings is like using a drop shot. Fair enough. Better hookup ratio when they T-bone it. All right, Brandon. No worries. You said, should I get a Shimano XLT XT or save up for the DC version? Personally, I've heard really, really good things about that XT version of the SLX, man. I would get that. But again, personal preference, right? I'm not a big DC guy, at least yet. I'm so behind on the comments. I know, man. I'm catching up. Hey, I'm caught up. What up? What up? What up? I'm caught up. Justin, I own this chat. You guys are awesome in the chat. I love that, by the way. Appreciate you guys. Okay, stick baits. We talked about the sticko. We talked about the clout. You talked about the Magnum finesse worm. That's pretty much all I want to talk about. There are a few other worms on the market that I know are really good. I heard the Reaction Innovations Pocket Rocket and the Missile Baits 48 and some other stick baits have some really good action on them. So I try to keep it simple with stick baits, and one, not throw them very frequently, and two, I throw different soft plastic worms for each application. I don't have a lot of super versatile worms. I have different worms for wacky rigging. I have different worms for Nico rigging, different rigs for shaky heads, different rigs for Ned rigs, obviously. So yeah, just something to think about. But right here, I wanted to talk about wacky rigged stick baits in particular. So those are the ones I'm going to talk about. We're not going to talk about Nico rig baits as much right now, even though that Magnum finesse worm from Zoom is probably my favorite. And yeah, Ray, I'm sorry, man. I cheated. I jumped ahead on the comments. Had to do that, man. Taj says, try the digital reel by Shimano. Fair enough. And yeah, we have stayed on topic, Ryan. I'm trying my best, man. Brandon says he loves the Pocket Rocket. Yeah, I've heard good things about it, but haven't tried it yet. All right, guys. So moving on from stick baits, though a Nico rig is a killer bait to throw and it's a great conversion, right? Let's say you're not throwing it Ryan style, where the hook is sideways and where I think you have the best action out of it. Let's say then you switch over and you rig it like so, just the standard wacky rig where you've got one O-ring and you're rigging the hook up, okay? Imagine then you just put a nail weight in the head and voila, you've got a Nico rig. So it's already rigged for you, just weightless. A Nico rig by definition is a nail weighted wacky rig. So yeah, I think a Nico rig is a good spawn bait as well. You get a little bit of a different presentation. Most people would think of a Nico rig as a deep water presentation, but that's not necessarily true. Same goes for a drop shot, which we're going to talk about here shortly. But right now we're going to move on and talk about the Ned rig. Okay. We've talked about the Ned rig a lot, but we're going to roll through it again right now. All right. So I'm going to miss a lot of comments. And here's the thing is that they don't pop up as I'm talking to you guys and I go on a rant for 5 minutes and then check the comments. I'm like where things were. So it depends on how many things you guys are saying. But all right. So Ned rigs, killer bait in tons of different scenarios. But springtime, great finesse bait. Great small profile, really good bed fishing bait too. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different baits. We're going to roll through them, the ones that I've tried, the ones that I haven't tried, but I'm excited to try. And we're going to talk about heads and the different ways to rig it. We're not going to talk as much about where to fish it or how to fish it so much as how to rig it and what baits are out there, what ones I like. So Z-Man, of course, is the OG. With the Finesse TRD. As you can see, I've got 2 or 3 packs worth of the baits loaded into one pack. This Copper Truce color is still my favorite in the Finesse TRD, though I do throw it in a handful of different colors. There are a couple spin-offs of that bait. The big TRD I don't think counts when we're talking about Ned rigging. The big TRD goes with a different hook and essentially steps into a different category where the rig is not the same anymore. So ordinarily a Ned rig is a bait that is going to be in the 2.5 to 3.5 inch range. Once you get to 4 inches, it changes a little bit. So the 1 4-inch bait that I like to throw that I might make an argument for is the Finesse Shads by Z-Man. And only because it's got such a small profile for what it is. You know, the big TRD is a thick stick style bait, and this Finesse Shads is pretty much, you know, a 2.5 inch long or 2 inch long tail and a 2 inch long subtle shad style body. And it's super high floating, has a lot of action on the tail. Really like this one on a Ned rig, but it is mostly a drop shot bait. But you can do a lot with this bait. The Finesse Shads by Z-Man is one that doesn't get talked about enough, and one that I really, really like. I saw that Travis Manson from Smallmouth Crush said recently that he's going to start throwing the Finesse Shads more, and I think he's smart for doing so. Next up is the TRD Minnows. This has a bait fish profile to it, not just in shape, but in the fact that it's got a tail on it and then a little bit of a head. Again, this is just like the Finesse Shads. This is a drop shot bait that does really well on a Ned rig. 3.5 inches, so it flirts with the big, the larger end of the spectrum of what I would consider feasible for a Ned rig. But thought I would mention the Finesse Shads and the TRD Minnows, which are drop shot baits, but I think do well on a Ned rig. Okay. The other one that is fits into that same exact category is the Trick Shots by Z-Man. This is a drop shot bait, but they make it in 2 different sizes. they make it in a 4.2, and they make it in a 3.5. So this 3.5 size is definitely small enough to Ned rig. If you look at the shape of it, it's got this very unique bait fish profile, where it's pointed on bottom and it's totally flat on top. It's got a solid head, but a lot of ribbing on the belly of the bait, and then it's got this flat tail. Okay, very cool action. Wants to nose down, tail up, so it does really well on a Ned rig, and it's going to have more tail action. So this bait in profile is very, very close to, say, the new Missile Baits Ned Bomb, not in body shape, but in tail style, that spade tail. So the 3.5-inch trick shots is one that I think could be Ned rigged, and I plan to Ned rig it, not just drop shot it. Comes in a 6-pack, and is a very interesting bait. So I have it in both sizes, but again, that 3.5-inch size just feels so much smaller than the 4.2, which seems like a very good drop shot bait, a perfect size for a drop shot, but only comes in a 5-pack, and yeah, better Goby imitator there. Okay, let me catch up on comments for a second before I keep moving. Riley says, sorry, off topic, but Tyler, do you recommend any 6th Sense baits other than worms? I have a couple packs of them, but trying to grow my arsenal. Yes. So in terms of soft plastics, I'm still playing around, right? They make some Divine swim baits, which I like. They make some craws. The Stroker craw we talked about last week. I really like this. It's a smaller bait. It's 3.3 inches. So profile wise, you don't have to trim it down to put it on a jig, but it's still big enough to run on a 3/0 hook, if you want to Texas rig it or flip it or do whatever. But it runs really well as a swim jig trailer, a chatterbait trailer, a jig trailer. This Stroker craw is a really cool one, and it's going to have a really aggressive swimming action, kind of like a speed craw type of action, but it's got legs that are just a little bit thicker soft plastic, and these baits feel really durable and well made. They make a beaver style bait called the prawn as well, more of a dead action flipping bait, that I am going to check out but don't have any of just yet. So I think those are pretty much the only soft plastics that they have out right now. But you know, those 3 worms, they have a shaky head worm, they have that wacky rig worm, so the Divine shaky head worm, the Clout, and the Ned fry. Which, while we're at it, let's talk about the Ned fry, guys. 4.6-inch Ned bait, technically, but most Ned rig baits are like 3 inches long. So theoretically, what you do is cut this down. And I did that today as an experiment. I took one and I chopped it down to the exact same size as the Strike King Ned Ocho, rigged it on a Nedlock's head, and look at this Ned rig bait, dude. This is like an electric shad type of color, and that's wicked. Still got some good action on it for how short it is. So really excited about the Ned Fry. That's a little bit off topic, but yeah, Riley. 6 Cents came onto the scene. They're a crankbait company. They've got some really good jigs. I talked about their swim bait heads already. The 6 Cents Divine swim bait heads are awesome. The Divine swim jig is my favorite swim jig on the market. They make some awesome other jigs too. But yeah, their crankbaits, all their hard baits are super high quality. 6 Cents falls into a category of um, really high quality and good value. You know, you're paying a decent amount. It's like a mid price point for a high quality. So we could get into talking about their hard baits for a while, but I'm pretty sure I saw a comment from Ray saying 50x, 50x, 50x. So the 50x is their like um, small to mid-sized square bill crankbait, and that's definitely one that you should look at. I think the 50x is the rattling square bill, and the S is the silent. He's saying both are ones that you should check out. So 6 Cents, definitely worth a look. But one thing that I do to save money is to look on their sale page, their clearance page at the upper right corner of their website and see what is on sale. You can get some of their stuff for a couple bucks off and sometimes clearance. Like right now, their mini mag, so Magnum Square Bill in a Rambo red color is $5. I'm considering getting one of those and a bunch of soft plastics. 6 Cents is running a deal right now on soft plastic baits. 25% off. This runs for another few more days. The code that you want to enter is SP25. Soft plastics 25. SP25. And you'll save 25% off their soft plastic baits. So I will be honest in telling you right now, in my cart, I've got a bunch of stuff and kind of all of their soft plastics. I've got one of those mini mag square bills, and then I've got like 12 or something packs of soft plastics. Because with 25% off, you spend $65 and you save about $15. You're at that $50 mark to get the free shipping. So that's kind of my thought process. I will get another 5 or 6 packs of worms, and then I will get another few packs of swim baits, another couple packs of their stroker craws, and then 1 or 2 packs of their prawns to give a shot. So Riley, 6 Cents is definitely worth a closer look, but you can spend a lot of money in short order if you're buying their stuff at full price, because they charge somewhere between $8 and $12 for pretty much all of their hard baits, and you pay more for nice colors and things like that. So yeah, fits well. Big sale on their soft plastics right now. Yep. Sorry, I am slow. Yeah, Riley. Hope that answered your question. I'm gonna zoom on these comments. Dick says that Ned Fry is inferior to the TRD. Yeah, different bait, man. Different bait for sure. So I'm curious to try the Ned Fry more and get to know it this year. What I think is interesting about it is the size that it comes in at that 4.5 inch. It's very similar to that bigger Robo Worm Ned worm I was showing you, that 4.5 inch. I think it's a good crossover bait. So good shaky head, Nico rig, and Ned rig bait. I think I'm going to like it a little bit better on a Nico rig and on a lightweight shaky head just as much as I will on a Ned rig. But I think it's going to bridge the gap and be right in the same category as like the Ned Ocho. This is a low salt, high floating soft plastic, but not one that is going to stand up every time. So it is going to want to lay down or roll over from time to time. but with high quality, soft plastic, cool colors. Um, I think that action can be desirable in certain situations. So sometimes you want a bait that is going to stand straight up at all times and always just be right in their face. And sometimes you want a dead bait that is going to lay flat, like the original, that Robo Worm Ned Worm and the Guggen baits Rattling Ned. There are some baits that just lay flat. And this one and the Strike King Ned Ocho fall into a category that is somewhere in between. It's going to stand up if you hop the bait aggressively enough, but if you drag it um, or you work the bait slower, it's going to want to, lay down some. So um, inferior is arguable, to each his own, right? There are a lot of YouTube channels you can watch, get codes for discounts. Ned Fry on a drop shot. Interesting. Good idea, Ray. Ned Fry on a drop shot. Yep. Caught your first drop shot bass that way. Right on, man. $8.99 for the 50X. Yep. All right. Ray says, wait till you feel the hardware on 6 cents. Yeah, the hardware on 6 cents baits is very aggressive. So other Ned rig baits that I like to throw, once you get out of the standard worm profiles, there are some tube baits that they make. One is the standard TRD tubes. Okay. If you didn't already know about this bait, you need to check it out. This is a super sleeper bait. Awesome Ned rig bait, awesome drop shot bait. Really tiny, can be rigged a number of different ways, and because it's got a solid head but a hollow body. So I'm not going to talk about it too much, but TRD tubes, really good bait. 2.75 inches in size, including those tentacles. Okay, very similar bait. It came out last year is the TRD ticklers. And I've been talking about this bait a bit more recently. Very similar profile, but you only get 4 thicker tentacles than all of those skinny ones from the TRD tubes. Now the body tapers a little bit, and it is a solid body the whole way through. So unlike the tubes that is hollow, you cannot put a rattle inside here. You're limited to the ways that you can rig it or fish it, but still very, very good Ned rig bait. Tiny profile, 2.75 inches, including these little ticklers on here that are pretty substantial. The ticklers has jumped up to being one of my favorite Ned rig baits over the last year, especially because it's kind of a crossover bait there. Imitates multiple types of forage. And just a little spoiler alert, this pearl white ticklers, I just ordered another pack of these and ordered a couple packs of the Lifted Jigs Ned EWG in the white color from Discount Tackle, and we'll be giving away one of each in the giveaway this month. That is the Spawn giveaway. I already told you about a white pack of the Rage Bugs, but we're also going to have a white pack of the TRD Ticklers and matching weedless Ned rig hooks to go with them. So white is an awesome color for spawn fishing. Everybody knows that. So is black too. So TRD Ticklers is a great bait. And then there's some cool craw baits, creature baits. And I've talked about all of these. The TRD Hogs is it a creature style bait? The TRD Craws is a craw style bait, and the TRD Bugs is a beaver style bait. All three are super effective. This is probably my favorite one and rig at the moment. This is the newest addition to the lineup, the TRD Bugs. See, it's got more of a dead action, like a beaver style bait. And I've got it rigged weedless on the God, why do I always forget what this is called? This is the Finesse Bullets jig head. This is the lighter weight, but you see it's got weight on the bottom of the hook. So it wants to rest like that and present the bait at more of a 45. So these claws, tentacles are going to be up at an angle. You can fish this through anything you want. Great hookup ratio too. No problem, Russ Dennis. BJ says, do you use any kind of creature baits for the Ned rig? Yeah, so these ones are the main ones that I throw, but I'm starting to venture into other ones that are not made by Z-Man and don't necessarily float up. And that's what I wanted to talk about more than anything on my last live stream, was just what counts as a Ned rig. Once you start venturing into bigger baits and different profiles and baits that don't float, like, is it still a Ned rig? Technically, I think yes, so long as you're using the same head and hook. I think those things are important, right? So, like, let's use an example. The new Strike King Ned baits. This is the Rage Ned Craw. Okay, really cool bait, but it's a craw, right? This thing is going to flap and it is going to lay down. It is not going to stand up like a traditional Ned rig. But from a profile standpoint, a size standpoint, you can still totally put this on the same hook that you're going to put any other Ned rig on, and fish it like you would a Ned rig. Now you're only going to utilize a couple retrieves that you would with a standard Ned rig, but same goes for some of these other profile baits. Here you get the Strike King Rage Cutter Worm, and this guy will swim for you. And then and they also put out the Ned Ocho, and none of these baits float, but none of them are high in salt, so they're kind of like a medium buoyancy to them, and will float under certain conditions depending on what the bottom structure is. So I think they're interesting baits to have in the arsenal. And another one that fits into that category is the Missile Baits Ned Bomb. I was talking about this earlier. You get a little bit thicker of a body, and then you get this really thin spade tail. And this bait does a pretty good job of standing upright, and that tail just kind of wagging back and forth and enticing the fish. So you get a little bit more erratic action out of that when you hop it. It might go over here and then over there. It's not going to travel straight back to you, but makes for an interesting presentation. Another one that is very high quality is the X Zone Lures Ned Zone This is a pretty straight profile with a bulbous tail. Has a good scent on it. Really cool colors that they pour, and it is pretty high floating. So very good Ned rig bait there as well. I've already talked about a ton of different Ned rig baits, but where it gets a little bit, where the line gets blurred, is when you're using baits that aren't designed for the Ned rig, right? So like all those finesse jig trailers that I have, let's say you want to pull out the Baby Rage Menace Grub, for example. Let's use this bait here. Awesome, awesome little bait. Take it and you rig it up on a Z-Man Nedlocks jig head. Okay. And voila, you've got an awesome little profile here. Hook's not too small or too big for this bait. You can rig it like I have here so that when you are lifting it and dropping it, that these kickers are going to do their thing. You're going to have a lot of action out of these guys. Or you can rig it sideways so that it's got a little bit more subtle bait fish type of profile. I would rig it so it's got this more aggressive action. And I'm going to, rip it up and then let it fall. And on that fall, it is going to bring fish over to it. So it's not going to be so much a dead sticking presentation, so much as a reaction bait, something to get their attention. But on a bait whose profile is so small like this, the Rage Menace Grub has a fat body, but this is a 3-inch bait. It's really small. And they make the Rage Craw in a 3-inch, and now the Rage Bug in a baby 3-inch size. And, Zoom makes the tiny Brush Hog, and the Pit Boss is made in a tiny size. Like I said, the Kitech Crazy Flapper comes in a tiny 2.8-inch size that I like. So all those baits could be rigged on a Ned rig hook and therefore become a Ned rig bait. I just feel mixed about that, right? Are they Ned rig baits, or are they finesse jig trailers, or are they tiny craws and creatures designed to be fished on a jig or as a tiny Texas rig, or how? Sometimes it's a little bit confusing. But let's move on from the Ned rig and move on to talking about the drop shot. And this will be kind of our last topic of conversation. Hey, Ray, thanks for the appreciation. Talking baits and fishing. Absolutely. Everybody loves it. Bugs are always a good way to go. What are some good hooks you like to use for Ned rig, says BJ? Dick says, I had luck on the Ned bug, but didn't like the idea of it laying on his face. Fair enough. Russ says, okay, I'm drunk and need to get up tomorrow to go fishing. Hey, Russ, good luck tomorrow. Rip some lips. Have a killer time. Best of luck. Let us know on the next stream that we're on. When we're on, let us know how you did. We'll all remember that you were going out. So have a good rest of your night. Let me answer the question about hooks real quick. That was BJ's. So BJ, I don't venture too much with hooks. There are a lot of different companies that make them now. I have ventured some, okay? I like to use the standard Z-Man hooks, okay? The Finesse Shrooms jig head, and I like to use it in the small sizes, the 1/10 ounce and the 1/16 ounce. I do like these colored heads. The red and the chartreuse ones are awesome. Green pumpkin, of course, is tough to beat. The Finesse Shrooms comes with a size 1 hook on it. Very light wire hook. But that's how the rig was designed. Z-Man also makes a Ned Locks hook, or jig head rather, that comes with a different bait keeper. As you can see, it doesn't have um, a wire barb, but rather this piece of lead that holds the plastic on. And then it has a thicker wire hook on there. Not sure if you'd be able to see that, but the gauge of wire is significantly wider on the Ned Locks than it is on the Finesse Shrooms. So I like to throw that hook as well, depending on when and where. Um, and then, like I showed you guys on that TRD Bugs, do like to throw the of course I always forget this, the Finesse Bullets. Okay, it's got a bullet weight on the front and an EWG hook. This is a hook that is really only made for Elastec baits, and I'll show you why. It's because the way you have to rig it around the weight. You know, this is a 1/10 ounce size, and the weight is a little bit smaller on the 1/16, but it's even fatter on the sizes bigger than the 1/10. So what you have to do is once you go through and pop out, you have to thread the weight through the bait. So you can't do that with a normal soft plastic. Luckily, Elastec will just stretch and go right around it, and then it's not an issue, but that will tear up a standard soft plastic bait. So really, you're only going to get these Finesse Bullets heads to fish with Elastec baits. The other head that I really like is the one I just talked about, the Lifted Jigs Ned EWG. And this is not going to present the bait at a 45 like the Finesse Bullets does, because it's got this bullet head. It's going to lay at a 45 and present your bait up at an angle. The Ned EWG is an EWG hook molded onto a mushroom style head. So it's still going to present the bait straight up and down. So I like this hook better for worms than I do craws or creatures, because in my opinion, it's more natural for a craw to be defensive like this than defensive like this. Just get in my head about that sometimes. The owner blockhead is a good Ned rig head. It's got a single wire keeper on there and an owner hook, which of course is awesome. Gamakatsu makes it cool. They call it Finesse Jig Head. It's got a screw lock on there. The only thing is the head is round and not flat on top. So I got to think about that. I would really only use it on soft plastics that do not stand up. And then some, like the new Trocar, now have these double barb plastic. And I do like these double barb keepers, like come on the Trocars. They've got a different hook style on there, but I think those are interesting and worth the look too. So those are the main Ned rig hooks that I like to use. The Z-Man Finesse Shrooms, Z-Man Ned Locks, Z-Man Finesse Bullets, the Lifted Jigs Ned EWG, also for a weedless presentation. And then outside of Z-Man, I like the Gamakatsu Finesse Jig Head and the owner blockhead. So those are a couple good ones to look at. It's interesting that I can't find the bait that, there it is, that was on the thumbnail for tonight's video. I think this falls into the category of not a Ned rig, but you guys tell me in the comments, do you think this could be called a Ned rig or not? This is a 3-inch bait. This is the Savage Gear 3D Craw. Super realistic profile from the tail to the body, the segments of the body, to the antenna and the eyes and the claws. It's made from a 3D scan of an actual crawfish, and is an awesome little bait. A little bit pricey, but super realistic and great around the spawn. So whether you're fishing this weedless like I have here or on a drop shot, this is a tough bait to beat. And I've got it rigged weedless here on, this is an owner finesse football head. This is a really unique hook that is relatively new, and it's got a 2/0 EWG hook attached to a football head. So really cool deal. Does present the bait at a little bit of an angle, but it's mostly just going to be a natural slow drag and a good bed fishing bait. So plan to fish this on beds here in a month or two as we get there. Here it's not really till May and even stretching into June that we've got good bed fishing here. So I don't expect that to be for about another month or so, but we shall see. The weather has really fluctuated here as of late. So let's talk about drop shots. Okay, Ross is out of here. Ryan says, hey, did you happen to check out any of those ice fishing videos? No, not yet, man. I did not. I thought I already answered that question. BJ, no problem, man. And you think that is a Ned rig bait? Fair enough. I'm not sure whether or not I think it is, but it doesn't really matter, right? Here's that Rage Ned bug pre-rigged on a 1/16 ounce Z-Man Finesse Shrooms hook that just fits perfect. I call that a Ned rig, even though it is not a standard Ned rig looking bait. And I think it's absolutely killer. Higher action for sure, but worth having. A little bit pricey though. They are still selling for $6.99 a pack. You get 9 in a pack, but in my opinion, that's a little bit pricey for a Ned rig bait. I think it's cool when certain baits like this one, the Ned Fry comes in a 10 pack for $4, and there's a lot of different ways to fish the bait, a lot of different things you can do with it. Whereas that Rage Ned bug is very one-dimensional. It's made just for the Ned rig. You're not going to throw it many other ways. You could throw it on a finesse jig if you wanted, but they did just release this bait too, the Baby Rage bug. So, the crossover is pretty significant between these two baits. In terms of how you could fish them. Are you going to throw this 3-inch Baby Rage bug on a Ned rig? Probably not. Are you going to throw this Rage Ned bug on a Ned rig? Of course you are. But you could start fishing these baits extremely similarly. You're probably just going to use an EWG hook on this more so. But I think it's interesting that they put out two baits that are so incredibly similar at the same time. And again, same deal, retails for $6.99, but you get 9 in a pack, no clamshell packaging. I think they're a little bit pricey for what you get. So I think those prices will go down over time just because every other Rage Tail bait, all the Strike King Soft plastics are like $5.50 a pack, and the new ones are $6.99 a pack. So I think that will change over time. Justin, out of here. You have a great rest of your night. No problem, man. We're gonna make this drop shot segment pretty quick, I think. I'm gonna try and stay on topic with drop shot baits specifically, and try not to venture into baits that could be thrown on a drop shot, because there's a lot of that crossover too. So let's first talk about curly tail worms, I guess. The robo worm curly tail is a classic. The Zoom, I think this is called the dead ringer. Not quite sure. And the Yamamoto 4-inch curly tail is a really good one too. Curly tail worms, I think, are a little bit old school in nature, but kind of bridge that gap. They're a nice power finesse type of deal. You get a lot of action out of a small profile most of the time, and so throwing like a 4-inch curly tail worm on a drop shot can be really cool, especially in more aggressive situations, like if you're fishing in current. A curly tail worm can have more action on its own, and can have more drawing power. Now with straight worms, I think it's really tough to beat the robo worm, and I think this is the 4.5-inch size, not the 6-inch, but they're smaller. It's either 4 or 4.5. Their colors are just really, really tough to beat, and it's not super expensive. Of course, they are fragile, so you're only going to get a couple of fish per bait at most, but the baits are going to catch them. That is for damn sure. Another bait that is not talked about very much, but I like quite a lot, is this Kitech Easy Shaker. Okay, this was one of those baits that I was throwing as a chatterbait trailer, I think 2 seasons ago, and had some good success on it. They make this in a couple different sizes, but it is a really good drop shot worm and shaky head worm, just because it will sit totally horizontal on a drop shot, and then it will float just like you want on a shaky head. Kitech makes some sleeper worms. Another one that I've got next to it is the Kitech Leech. This is a really interesting profile bait here. But the reason that I don't have a bunch of colors in this bait are just that it is very one-dimensional. You're only going to fish this on a drop shot. Now, you can rig it either way. You can rig it sideways, so it's got more of a funky action to it, or you can rig it up and down, so it's more fishy. But that Leech is a really cool bait. Biospawn makes the Plasma Tail worm. This is the 4.5-inch size. Again, great drop shot and shaky head worm, and was one of those baits I was throwing as a trailer. That plasma, that dipped tail can be a difference maker, right? So you get a yellow tail, you get a red tail, throw that on the back of a spinner bait or a chatterbait, can be very cool. And another couple baits I want to show you. A sleeper bait on a drop shot is a 3-inch Senko, but how about this? I forget what they called it, a split tail Senko. This is the 3-inch size of the Sticko from Bass Pro Shops. It's in a morning dawn color. Pretty cool bait there. Bait fish profile, but on a Sticko. And lastly, here's a Zoom Swamp Crawler. Kind of an underground, old school type of bait. Very high flotation, slow sink on a wacky rig, um, swamp crawler will catch them, and it's a great value bait. Really, really cool. You get like 25 in a pack or something like that. Now, a few others that I want to mention. That are drop shot specific. You know, I already mentioned the Robo Worm Alive Shad. It's just got a shad profile with a very thin tapered tail. Like that bait a lot. The Jackal Crosstail Shad is a good one. Has kind of a unique body style and is a super, super supple, soft plastic. Very soft plastic. It's got a flat bottom, rounded half of the bait, and then like a almost tail section in the back. Subtle bait, really, really effective and popular drop shot bait. 4 inches in size. Got those in a couple size or a couple colors, the IU and the melon copper. Another one that I really like is the Yamamoto shad shaped worm. Pretty similar. This bait can be rigged like this or with the flat part down. You're going to get a little bit different action. You're going to get a faster sink if the flat top is up, and a slightly better hookup ratio if the flat top is up. But then you're going to get a more interesting gliding action, a slow sink if the flat part is down. I like the flat part down when nose rigging that bait, nose hooking that bait. Then the Beast Coast Magic Flick is a really interesting bait. Similarly has a bait fish profile with a flat top. And you get this tail back section, but it's on the bottom of the bait, not the top, like the crosstail shad. So this really emulates a bait fish and looks like it with the details of the head and the scales and everything on the side. So the Magic Flick is a really cool bait fish imitating drop shot as well. And then one other that is a new bait that I haven't yet thrown is the Power Bait Water Bug. Look at this little guy. This is a awesome goby imitator. Looks just like a goby in terms of its body. It's got a rounded top, flat bottom, like that crosstail shad in terms of the front part of the body, but it's got these 2 arms off the side, and then it's got a tiny little kicker tail. So you're going to get a little bit of kicking action out of it, but it is mostly just going to hover. Put this on a short leader drop shot, and it's going to look just like a goby. So that's an interesting one. Of course, it reeks of power bait, but is a little bit harder of a soft plastic. I can't tell whether that's going to be a good thing or not. A lot of these baits are a really soft plastic, like the Robo Worm and the Jackal Crosstail Shad. Those baits, you often burn through them, you know, 1 or 2 fish per bait. But some of these, maybe like this power bait, the Beast Coast, you might get a couple more fish per bait. You know, the Yamamoto is going to be not very durable either. So those are all drop shot specific baits, and there's a lot more that you could throw on a drop shot. Most Ned rig baits, a lot of swim baits, a lot of stick baits, and then small profile baits like all those ones that we were talking about is borderline Ned rig baits are ones that could work on a drop shot too. and a drop shot is killer on a bed. So definitely going to be a technique that I utilize here when bed fishing around the spawn is throwing a drop shot. Riley says it helps the bite a lot. I have a couple and they work very well. Not sure which worms you guys are talking about. Maybe the swamp crawler. Anyway, guys, we've been streaming for 2.5 hours. I covered all 5 or 6 categories that I wanted to, and we addressed a lot of different baits. We didn't talk a ton about any one of the topics, but we addressed them all, and we got a little bit off topic here and again. But that's what happens here, guys. We just wanted to escape a little bit, hang out, shoot the shit, and talk baits, hang out with you guys. So appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. If for some reason you're watching this right now and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do me that favor. Subscribe to the channel, hit those notifications so you don't miss a future video. And hit the thumbs up on this video right now. Now, if you guys don't have any other questions or specific topics that you guys want to talk about, I am going to dip out of here. Riley says, another good stream. Hope you have a good rest of your night. Appreciate it, Riley. I still haven't made it to the post office, Riley. Feel really bad. Ordinarily it would be out, right? If we didn't have the issues that we do, that would have been out a long time ago. But makes me think that there's more that I need to include for you. And I can't remember. There were a few things even on this stream that you said you were interested in trying. So let's try and keep the conversation going so that I can actually get you something. Yeah, I know you say I don't need to feel bad, but maybe a Z-Man bait or something else I can throw in there for you just to make it more worth your while. Like I said, I'm giving you a couple chatter baits that I think are really interesting and will give you a feel for what different baits feel like, and then a couple different Ned rig heads that should go well with those baits that you've already got. But I apologize just because you've got some of these baits already and haven't been able to rig them, and you've been curious to try the chatter baits and don't have them. So I appreciate you saying don't feel bad, but I do still. So anyway, Ryan, no problem. My pleasure sharing the information. Feel free to ask questions anytime you've got them. I will hopefully be on here in the next week or so, but my wife is not working. She's off for like another 8 days or something. So we will see when we hop on. Hopefully I will post a few more regular videos, not just live streams, over the next week or two. So keep an eye out for those. Follow me on Instagram if you don't already. At hooksets.rfree. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Appreciate all the support and the community that we are establishing here. Looks like we've got kind of a regular crew who is super encouraging. All has a good time when hanging out here. So I'm glad that we can all have this this place to hang out. So Riley says it's all good. We can talk more about it another day. No problem. Have a good night. Sleep well. Have a great Wednesday, hump day tomorrow. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.